Firstly, this unique Guru called Ramakrishna. All incarnations are unique, but from him, like the sun spreading its glory through the rays of the sun, it spread it through 16, 17 people everywhere. The controversial is 16 or 17, but I will leave it at 16. One of them was Swami Abhedananda. So Swami Abhedananda, his life is here, and so it's appropriate that we read a little bit. This is from a book, God Lived With Him, Life Stories, collated by Swami Chetananda, who visited here. All right. Now this is related to what we have been studying also. So we might need a reader. So
I won't.
ascertaining what is right and what is wrong is a great dilemma in human life. Begins like that. You see, most religions have a code of values that says this is morally right, this is morally wrong. Every scripture says this is what you should do, this is what you should not do, this is what you should go towards, this is what you should avoid. Last night we celebrated United Nations Non-Violence Day, and so it was an opportunity also to celebrate the birth of such a wonderful example of non-violence in Mahatma Gandhi. But where did Mahatma Gandhi get his principles of non-injury, ahimsa from? From the ancient values already there. It's a curious thing. If I had been asked to speak, because I thought of this when I was sitting in the St. Patrick Cathedral, that nobody addressed the issue. Why do you describe something as, in a negative way, as non-injury? It's a curious way of describing it. A lot of people talk about peace. A lot of people talk about the value of love. And yes, if you love, then you automatically won't be violent to any being. But why is it described in this negative way? It's because it's emphasizing a very important aspect of moral values to say, do not do this. Most say, please do this. But this one is saying, do not do this. Do not cause any harm in thought, word or deed to any creature. You know, don't even think about it. Don't even think that person cheated me, you know, I wish, and go on from there. And then it's a slippery slope downwards. So it's described in this way. Of all the 5 values described by Purnananda under control yam, only one is described in negative terms, and that is this ahimsa, non-injury. So it's a recognition, firstly, that we tend to injure people in thought, in word and in deed. Most of what we say harmfully is in terms of not only thought but also words. We may have a second thought about the deeds, but certainly in terms of our speech and in terms of our way we think, nobody can see what you're thinking. So privately you can think all kinds of things, but then it comes out in speech and can be extremely damaging. Damaging to who? Damaging to all, including yourself. See, there's a psychology technique that used to be taught. If you're angry, go and dig a hole somewhere, get rid of all your energy. But that's damaging to you, damaging to your psychology, because you're engendering a habit, an anger habit, and making it worse. You're allowing yourself to get out of control. And you can't use the argument, oh, you're not harming anybody. Because that argument assumes that we're all isolated individuals, not connected in any way. But that's not what we think. We understand that there is a unity of existence, that when I harm any element somewhere, I'm harming the entire thing. When I put pollution into the ocean, the whole ocean gets affected. Sooner or later, and comes back to me. Swami Abhedananda puts it like this: if you throw an object and hang around, throw an object out into space, hang around long enough, it will come back to you. Of course, in his day, they never understood the enormity of the universe. So hanging around will be millennia, multiple millennia, billions of years. Nevertheless, the principle is true. Everything is curved, everything is cyclical, everything is cyclical. It will come back to you. So by harming, just on a practical level, by harming some other entity in thought or word or deed, you're really harming yourself. There's only one entity. This is brought out in multiple ways. In the most ancient of texts, the Purusha Sukta brings it out that there is a person, a cosmic person. And that is why when you say in is a starting point. See God or the self in. But you see, the beauty of the imagination can be evoked and used and made a creative thing. So if you have an Ishtadevata, you can imagine the Ishtadevata in there. Supposing your Ishtadevata is Ramakrishna, and wherever you look, you see his divine face, beaming forth with a loving smile. What harm can you possibly do? Can you do any ahimsa if you see that? You can't do it. If I take every being to be a gross variety of something that is subtle, that sits within, and that's the Lord of the universe, what harm will I do? And then as my purity of mind increases, my knowledge also increases. And the knowledge lets me know, oh, I see. Knowledge does not mean information transfer. Knowledge means access, greater access to something that is true. And so as I enter into a greater understanding of truth, the within, the immanence of it becomes a pervasive thing. I can understand, oh Lord, you are operating through. And then ultimately the realization comes as there are no two. Wherever I look, I see you. There was an interesting discussion on this, very briefly, over some tea yesterday at St. Patrick's Cathedral. And I was talking to a Roman Catholic. So I said, you may be too young to know, to have heard of the Belgian nun that used to be called the Singing Nun. She was very famous. He presented a whole CD, not a CD, in those days, a record. So the Singing Nun, she was called. I think she was Dominican and she was Belgian, so she sang in French. Beautiful voice, just with a guitar, a very pure voice. And so one of the songs she sings is Entre les étoiles. I see you among the stars. And then she goes on to list every part of nature that she witnesses. Let's say on a walk, in daytime or nighttime. There I see your face there. And then I look there, I see your face there. Everywhere I see your face. What a glory. If you see that, will there be any such thing as injury? It's not possible. So because of this violence as a very dominant trait, animalistic trait in man, traced to our animalistic nature, which is purely the physical nature that provides us with a physical instrumentation and provides us with certain traits useful for propagating the species and useful for keeping the instrument going. But it is but an instrument. Don't make an identification with it. Therein is your biggest problem and your biggest So, ascertaining what is right and wrong is a great dilemma. Sometimes people try to hide their mistakes by keeping quiet, concealing the truth, philosophizing and excusing improper conduct or arguing to defend their actions. This is the nature of weak people. That person is truly great who does not hesitate to confess a mistake and tries to correct it immediately. Don't wait. Correct it immediately. Everybody makes mistakes. We're all, after all, looking for a state of perfection. Ultimately, the perfection can be called Brahman, but that's the only thing that has perfection. Everything else is imperfect. The human nature also is imperfect. But when you make a mistake, correct it immediately. Don't wait. Don't wait for a month and give it to the editing department. Make the editorial now. Make the editing now. Make the correction now. The best way to keep a house clean is, when you spill something, clean it now. Don't wait a month. Teach your children that also, if you have children. See? That when they don't tolerate an untidy room, for example. And tolerate it for 2 minutes. And then you make the correction. Correction has to be there immediately. This is the way anybody learns as well. New York used to be the crime capital of the world. And then they had a mayor that had 0 tolerance. You're not permitted to sit on a park bench. All right. Don't sit on a park bench. Enforce the rule. When you let it slide, the small things, you let the big things slide. Same thing with Guru-Shishya relationship. You let the small things slide, the big things will slide. So anyhow, that person is truly great who does not hesitate to confess a mistake and so on. Sometimes students do not see their own mistakes, so a real teacher always comes forward to correct them. Now Kali was serving his Guru. Kali is the name of Swami Abhedananda. Was serving his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna, during his last illness at the Kashipur garden house. There were 2 ponds in the compound, stocked with plenty of fish. Kali was a good angler. One day he caught some fish and news of this reached the master. In the evening, when Kali was serving him, the master asked, "Is it true that you have been catching many fish with a fishing rod?" "Yes, sir," the master. "Yes, sir." The master said, "It is a sin to catch fish with a fishing rod, for thereby living beings are killed." Made that correction. But in defense, Kali quoted from the Gita, because he was a scholar, he was an intellectual man. So he decided, here's a simple man. I'll quote him some scripture. So he quoted this passage, "He who thinks that the self is the slayer, as well as he who thinks that the self is slain, is ignorant. For the self neither slays nor is slain." You're not really catching a fish. And then he further added, "So why should it be a sin to catch fish?" Ramakrishna smiled. See his reaction. And tried to make Kali understand through various arguments. He said, when a person attains true knowledge, he does not take a false step. Suddenly the master began coughing, and there was a trace of blood in his sputum. And frightened by this, Kali told him, "Sir, talking will aggravate your cancer. Please do not talk anymore." But the master said, "I consider you to be one of the most intelligent of the boys. You will understand if you meditate on what I have just said." Very important lesson. Whatever is being said by the Guru can be meditated on. According to Ramakrishna's instructions, Kali meditated for 3 days and realized the meaning behind his statement. He went to the master and said, "Sir, I have now realized why it is wrong to catch fish. I shall not do it again. Please forgive me." The master was very pleased to hear this. He said, "It is deceitful to catch fish in this way. Hiding a hook inside bait and hiding poison in food offered to an invited guest are sins of the same kind." Kali humbly accepted what the master said and felt his infinite compassion. Ramakrishna continued, "It is true that the Atman does not die nor is it killed," endorsing what his argument was. "But he who has realized this truth is the Atman himself. So why should he have the tendency to kill others? As long as the tendency to kill remains, he is not identified with the Atman, nor does he have any self-knowledge. And that is why I say that when one attains true knowledge, one does not take any false step. You should realize that the Atman is beyond the body, the sense organs, the mind and the intellect, and that it is the witness of phenomena. The Master's words penetrating Kali's heart, and he realized the truth. Kali Prasad Chandra was born on Tuesday, 2nd October 1866. Why are we celebrating the 3rd? Well, because the dates shift according to lunar calendar. He was born at Goswami Lane, Ahirtola, North Calcutta. His father, Rasiklal Chandra, was an English teacher in the Oriental Seminary. His first wife died having a son and a daughter. This son's name was Bihari Lal. He later became a Christian. At the request of friends and relatives, this is his parents now, Rasikal married Nayantara Devi, a gentle and spiritual girl who was 14 years old. She was an ideal wife. In the course of time, she had 9 children. The first 5 of them died at an early age, 19th century, very typical. Of the remaining 4, Kali was the second. Before Kali was born, Nayantara prayed to the Divine Mother Kali for a son. And when the child was born, she gave him the name Kali Prasad, or Blessings of Mother Kali. In 1871, at the age of 5, Kali was admitted to Govinda Seal's nursery school, where he studied for 2 years. He learned the alphabet, heard stories from the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and began to memorize Sanskrit verses on morality and ethics. He then joined Jadu Pandit's Panga Vidyalaya. In the evening, he would go to Sanskrit school at Hathibogan, where he studied Sanskrit grammar. Kali was a bright student and a voracious reader. And during this period, along with his regular courses, he studied classical Sanskrit literature, including Hitopadesha, Raghuvamsha, Kumasambhavan, Shakuntala, many others. He learned prosody and could compose verses in Sanskrit. And at the age of 10, Kali was admitted to the Oriental Seminary, the well-known high school where his father taught English. One needs sound health in order to practice spiritual disciplines. Although from his boyhood, Kali was more interested in developing his intellect, he did not neglect his health. He swam regularly in the Ganga with his friends and exercised daily in the neighborhood gymnasium. However, once Kali had heard Herbert Spencer's Education book, in which the author claims that those who do vigorous physical exercise do so at the expense of their brains, he stopped going to the gymnasium. Kali had studied Wilson's History of India, and they had learned about Shankaracharya and so on. Kali's teacher tried to convince him that it was better to be a painter than a philosopher, but Kali replied, "No, sir, a painter studies the surface of things, but a philosopher goes below the surface and studies the causes of things. So I want to be a philosopher." He was extremely inquisitive in his boyhood. To satisfy his hunger for knowledge, he would ask his father various questions that surprised the wise English teacher. In addition, Kali would use his savings to buy books instead of refreshments. He had a remarkable memory and keen power of concentration. He learned to fish, shop, cook, work with wood, garden, bind books, and so on. When he was 14, he found a copy of the Bhagavad Gita in his father's study and began reading it. But his father told him that it was too difficult a book for one so young. Taking the book away from Kali, he hid it in his room. When his father left the house, Kali searched for the book and located it. And in the dead of night, when everybody was asleep, he read the Gita by the light of an oil lamp. I'm going to skip on a little bit. Kali regularly attended lectures in the Albert Hall. One day he expressed a desire to learn the yoga aphorisms of Patanjali, but Shashada told Kali that he had no time and referred him to another renowned scholar. So like that, he was interested in all these things. Now, the scriptures did not quench Kali's thirst for knowledge, so he desperately searched for a spiritual teacher. In June 1884, Kali went to Dakshinaswar and met Sri Ramakrishna. In his autobiography, he describes their first meeting in this way. I became restless to find a guru who could teach me yoga. I confided my desire to my classmate, Janeshwara Bhattacharya, who was very fond of me. And Janeshwara told me, I know a wonderful yogi. His name is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and he lives in Rani Rasmani's temple garden in Dakshinaswar. He has no pretensions. Many respectable people visit him, and he sometimes comes to Kolkata. Perhaps he can fulfill your desire to learn yoga. My joy knew no bounds when I heard this from Janeshwara, and I at once resolved to meet Sri Ramakrishna, though I had no idea where Dakshinaswar was. One Sunday morning, I started for Dakshinaswar by asking directions from people on the street. I crossed the Bhag Bazar bridge and walked north on the Barakpur trunk road. It was quite a distance. I then asked a person on the road about the temple garden. He told me, you have gone the wrong way. Kali temple is on the bank of the Ganga. Finally, I reached the temple garden at 11 o'clock. When I asked about Sri Ramakrishna, a temple worker informed me that I had gone to Kolkata, that he had gone to Kolkata that morning. And I was exhausted, having walked all that way barefoot in the sun. Disappointed, I sat on the steps of Sri Ramakrishna's northern veranda and wondered how I could ever get back to Kolkata. I was hungry and thirsty. I was dead tired. I had no money. I had not informed my family as to where I was going. I had no acquaintance in Dakshinaswar, and moreover, I had no strength to walk back to Kolkata. I began to cry. Just then, another young man arrived and asked me about Sri Ramakrishna, and I told him that he had gone to Kolkata. And the young man was also disappointed. We then talked, got acquainted with each other. On inquiry, I learned that his name was Shashi. He advised me about my circumstances, saying, have a bath in the Ganga, take prasad, and then return to Kolkata after a rest. Later in the afternoon, when I expressed my intention to return to Kolkata, Shashi told me, you should not return home without seeing the master. Is there any certainty that such an opportunity will come again in your lifetime? Since you have come to see him with so much difficulty, it is better for you to wait. I knew my parents would be worried about me because I had not told them where I was going. Understanding how I felt, Shashi told me, look brother, I have also come here without informing my parents. Don't worry, we shall stay here tonight. The master will positively return from Kolkata by late evening, as he never stays overnight at a devotee's house in Kolkata. Shashi showed me around. In the evening, took me to the Kali temple to attend the Vesper service. I felt tremendous peace and joy. Ramlal, the master's nephew, gave us some luchis and sweets for refreshments, and we waited on the northern veranda for the master's arrival. Finally, a horse carriage arrived at the northeastern corner of the master's room, and Shashi and Ramlal went to receive the master. My heart was beating hard. I stood where I was, motionless. After getting down from the carriage, Sri Ramakrishna said, Kali, 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 entered his room and sat on his small cot. Ramlal and Shashi informed the master about me while I waited on the veranda. Then Ramlal came out and said that the master was waiting for me. I entered the room and bowed down to him. Bow down is proper thing. It's not sitting and bowing. It's getting on your knees and prostrating. Any other way is lazy and irreverent. The master asked me, and I told him, I have a desire to learn yoga. Will you kindly teach me? Yoga, of course, doesn't mean standing your head or any of these things. Yoga, nobody in India thinks yoga is like that. Yoga means what we study here in the Bhagavad Gita. 18 chapters are 18 yogas. These are various approaches. So, will you kindly teach me? Master kept quiet for a while and then said, it's a good sign that you have a desire to learn yoga at this young age. You were a yogi in your previous life. A little was left for perfection. This will be your last birth. This is why we honor such entities. All of those 16 was their last birth. Yes, I shall teach you yoga. Rest tonight and come to me again tomorrow morning. The next morning, Ramlal told me the master was waiting to see me. Entering his room, I bowed down to him. He then asked me what I was studying, and I replied, I am now in the entrance class, 10th grade. Very good, said the master. Then he took me to the northern veranda. He asked me to sit on a cot. Cot means a low bed. When I was seated in the lotus posture, the master asked me to stick out my tongue. As soon as I did that, he wrote a mantram on it with the middle finger of his right hand and advised me to meditate on Kali, the Divine Mother. I did what he said. Gradually, I lost outer consciousness and sat in deep meditation. I felt an unspeakable joy within. I don't know how long I stayed in that condition. After some time, the master touched my chest and brought me back to outer consciousness. He then asked me what had happened, and I told him about my blissful experience during meditation. He was very pleased. Afterwards, the master instructed me on meditation and sang these lines of a mystical song. When will you sleep in the divine chamber with the clean good and the unclean evil? When these two wives are friendly to each other, Mother Shyama will be within your reach. The master further told me to meditate every morning and again at night and to report to him my visions and spiritual experiences. Then the master asked me to go to the Kali temple and meditate there. When I returned from the temple, the master gave me prasad and asked me to visit him again. He even offered to provide my fare if I could not get it from home. In the meantime, a devotee had arrived by carriage from Kolkata to visit the master, and the master asked me to return home with that devotee. On my way back home, I thought of the master's overwhelming love and compassion, and we'll move on a little bit. Whenever I went to Dakshinaswar, he reports, I would give personal service to the master. I would carry his towel and water pot when he went to the pine grove to answer the calls of nature. And sometimes the master would walk around the Pachavati with his hand on my shoulder. I also went with the master to Girish Ghosh Star Theatre to see the Chaitanya Leela and Prahlad Charitra plays. Every Saturday and Sunday, devotees would gather at Dakshinaswar to see the master. I also began visiting him on Saturday afternoons, returning to Kolkata the following day with some devotees. Thus I became acquainted with other disciples of the master. I would really feel immense bliss in my heart to hear the teachings of the master. And when in ecstasy, he would sometimes laugh, sometimes cry, sometimes dance, sometimes go into samadhi. Again, at other times, he would joyously sing in his melodious voice the songs of Ramprasad, Kamalakanta, and other mystic composers. Occasionally, he would sing kirtan, depicting Radha and Krishna's divine play in Vrindavan. Sometimes, while describing the divine play of Rama and Sita, he would, like the great Saint Tulsidas, float in an ocean of bliss. The spirit of the harmony of religions was reflected in Sri Ramakrishna's everyday life, and he constantly taught his followers the liberal universal message, as many faiths, so many paths. Ramakrishna used to teach us to chant Hari Bol, literally chant the name of the Lord, loudly while clapping our hands. When somebody asked him the reason for clapping one's hands, he said, as the birds of the tree fly away when one claps one's hands loudly, so the sinful thoughts of the mind go away when one chants God's name while clapping one's hands. Sometimes he would repeat, Hari is my Guru is Hari. O Krishna, O Govinda, you are my life and soul. Not I, but thou, thou. I am an instrument, you are the operator. Then he would go into his ecstasy, and in that state he would importune Mother Kali, but his words would not be audible to us. Watching his God-intoxicated state, we were amazed. We felt that the Master was in communion with the Divine Mother, that he was talking to her, and that the Mother was answering his questions. We realized that Sri Ramakrishna was not a human being, he was God. Ramakrishna taught us to practice japam and meditation every morning and evening. About meditation, he sometimes referred to his naked Guru Totapuri's illustration, telling us, Tota used to say that if a brass water pot is not cleaned or cleansed every day, stains accumulate on it. Likewise, if the mind is not cleansed by meditation every day, impurities accumulate in it. If the mind is not cleansed by meditation every day, impurities accumulate in it. Sometimes while teaching us, the Master would tell us about his own sadhana spiritual practice. He said, when I meditated, I became like a motionless stone image. Sometimes birds sat on my head, but I could not feel them. In fact, during deep meditation, when the mind becomes still and motionless, one does not notice if flies or mosquitoes sit on the body. The Master used to say that this is a sign of a concentrated mind. After nursing the Master, Kashipur Garden House and so on, a couple of weeks after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, the grief-stricken Holy Mother left for a pilgrimage, accompanied by Golapma, Lakshmi, M's wife, Kali, Yogan and Latu. They first stopped at Dargah, and then after visiting Varanasi and Ayodhya, arrived at Vrindavan. The party stayed at Kala Babu Kunja, Balaram Basu's retreat house. And once Ramakrishna had told Kali, there is a partial manifestation of Krishna in you. During his stay in Vrindavan, he visited many temples and meditated on Krishna for long hours. Kali was very austere and adventurous. He decided to circumambulate, go round Vrindavan with other Vaishnava pilgrims. It took 21 days to walk the 168 miles. One evening, early in September 1886, when Kali was in Vrindavan, Ramakrishna appeared before Surendra Mitra in Kolkata and said, "What are you doing here? My boys are roaming about without a place to live in. Attend to that before anything else." Surendra immediately rushed to Narendra's house and told him what had happened. He promised to provide the amount of money that he had formerly given for the Master at Kashipur. Narendra and other disciples rented a house in Baranagar at 10 rupees per month and established the first Ramakrishna monastery. Baranagar monastery was an abandoned, dilapidated 2-story building infested with snakes and said to be haunted by ghosts. The rooms on the ground floor were dark, damp, unfit for habitation, so they were used as the kitchen and for storage. Shashi was once bitten by a snake in one of those dark rooms. The monks set up a shrine in an upstairs room. The relics of the Master were brought from Balaram's house, and a picture of Sri Ramakrishna was placed on the altar. The articles that the Master had used at Kashipur were also preserved in the shrine room. Shashi kept the memory of the Master ablaze in the monastery with his wholehearted dedication and devout service to the Master. His scrupulous precision and regularity of service made everyone feel the living presence of the Master, and for that reason he was given the monastic name Swami Abhedananda. As soon as Kali heard about the Baranagar monastery, he returned to Kolkata and joined the Brotherhood. The southernmost room of the second floor was used for meditation and study, and was known as Kali Tapasvi's room. Tapasvi means one who performs tapas, austerity, since Kali secluded himself there during most of the day. An ascetic by nature, he ate vegetarian food, wore no shoes, and shunned people's company. He spent his time in meditation, studying the scriptures and composing some Sanskrit hymns on Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. One day Kali visited Holy Mother at her residence at Nilam Babu's house in Billow and read a hymn that he had composed about her. Prakritim Paramam Abhyam Varadam, etc. You're aware of it, isn't it? Prakritim Paramam. That song. All go like this. Good. Anyhow, we're moving on a little bit. All of them wandered around from there and met up occasionally. In June 1896, Vivekananda sent Shardananda from London to America to keep the Vedanta movement there alive. In July, he sent a cable to Ramakrishnananda, "Send Kari immediately to London to assist me in my work here. I am arranging his passage." Accordingly, Abhedananda left for London in the middle of August 1896 and arrived there towards the end of September. On the way, he suffered from seasickness and lack of proper vegetarian food. Abhedananda missed Vivekananda, Mr. E.T. Sturdy at the dock, but reached Miss Henrietta Muller's residence at Wimbledon. Swamiji was worried at first, but later was overjoyed when he saw that Abhedananda had arrived safely. The two brothers exchanged their news, and after many years of being apart, Swamiji, when we say Swamiji, always refers to Vivekananda, arranged to buy new clothes for Abhedananda, showed him around London, and introduced him to his friends and devotees. Gradually, Abhedananda became acquainted with Western culture and way of life. A month after his arrival, Vivekananda announced that Abhedananda would speak on Hinduism. At first, Abhedananda was nervous and reluctant to speak, but Swamiji heartened him with inspiring words. "Depend on the Master who has ever given me strength and courage in all the trials of my life. Out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh." These words comforted him and gave courage. Abhedananda based his lecture on the Panchadashi, an authoritative text on the Vedanta. On 27th October 1896, he gave his maiden speech before the learned audience of the Christo Theosophical Society at Bloomsbury Square in London. Vivekananda was highly pleased and said, "Even if I perish on this plane, my message will be sounded through these dear lips, and the world will hear of it." Vivekananda was fully confident that even in his absence, Abhedananda would be able to carry out the Vedanta work in London. Swamiji entrusted him with these classes, Vedanta and Raja Yoga, and left for India in December 1896. For 1 year, Abhedananda continued to give classes and lectures in different churches and religious and philosophical societies in London and its suburbs. During his stay in London, the Swami became acquainted with many distinguished savants, including Max Muller and Paul Deussen. Abhedananda's eloquence, his lucid exposition of Vedanta philosophy, and his depth of spiritual realization made a profound impression on his audience. To establish the order's work in India, Vivekananda called Shardananda back from America, and he asked Abhedananda to carry on the work of the Vedanta work in the United States. So on 31st July 1897, Abhedananda left for New York and arrived there on 9th August. He was the guest of Miss Mary Phillips, the secretary of the Vedanta Society of New York, which Vivekananda had founded in 1894. On 25th August, a reception for Abhedananda was given by the society. He started a lecture series at Mott Memorial Hall in New York, which was rented by the Vedanta Society. So they had to rent in those days. He gave his first lecture, What is Vedanta? Edward Emerson, a close relative of Ralph Waldo Emerson, presided over the meeting. About this first lecture, Swami Abhedananda, a Western monk, wrote in with the Swamis in America. Punctually at 3 o'clock, the Swami entered the hall. He was dressed in a robe and a turban of an orange color. He went straight to the platform and without a moment's delay began to deliver his lecture. The discourse was so lucid, convincing and impressive. There was not much flourish, not much eloquence, hardly any gesticulation. It was straightforward, a well-reasoned out exposition of Vedanta philosophy delivered in a calm, dignified manner. Young, tall, straight, good-looking, the Swami had his appearance in his favor. I was told that the Swami had listened to what the Swami, I was told that the Swami I had listened to was Swami Abhedananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. Then he began giving classes on Vivekananda's Raja Yoga twice a week. After that, the Upanishads and so on, all of that he started teaching. He was in America for easily 30 years. So, traveling all over, not only from there, but also to the west coast of America and so on. On 29th June, Abhedananda and Professor Herschel C. Parker of Columbia University, then president of the New York Vedanta Society, went for a long tour from Alaska to Mexico. They reached Alaska via Toronto, Fort William, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. In Alaska, they were Governor Brady's guests. The governor's sister showed them the deserted homes of Native Americans and other important sites. On the way to Mexico, they saw the Portland Fair in Oregon, met Swami Trigunatitananda in San Francisco, who we also came across, and visited Swami Satchidananda in Los Angeles. And they visited the Grand Canyon and so on. So he went briefly back to India, then returned to America, spent a long time in America. Then ultimately he returned back to India. In 1923, after returning, he went to Tibet. After returning from Tibet, wrote Abhedananda in his diary, I established the Ramakrishna Vedanta Society in Kolkata, of which I am the president. In 1924, I opened a branch of this society at Darjeeling under the name of Ramakrishna Vedanta Ashram. Why did Abhedananda move from Belumat to Kolkata? Moni Badchi wrote in Swami Abhedananda's spiritual biography, when he returned from America, he returned with a huge number of books and furniture and a pile of his manuscripts relating to his innumerable speeches and writings, which were to be processed before publishing in book form. Those things remained almost unpacked for want of adequate space in the monastery of Belur. Ramakrishna Mission headquarters in those days had a limited number of rooms, and it became difficult to provide Abhedananda with a suitable and even sizable space. So he goes on like that. Now what's interesting in these lives is not only their young childhood, then what they did, and how they spread the message of the Vedanta, but also how they passed away. After dedicating the shrine of Sri Ramakrishna on 29th August 1937, Abhedananda left Darjeeling on 21st September. It had been his last visit. On the way to Calcutta, the Darjeeling mail was derailed, and Abhedananda strained his heart as he hurriedly left the train. Completely exhausted, he returned to the Ramakrishna Vedanta Mutt in Calcutta, and from then on his health began to fail, and water began accumulating in his system. Several prominent doctors treated his dropsy, but in the end he was under the care of Kaviraj Vimalananda, an Ayurvedic physician. His life's work done, he silently began to prepare himself for his final journey. On his 73rd birthday, he said to one of his disciples, I am only an instrument in the blissful sportive play of the Master, and the moment my life's mission is over, I shall not wait even for a second longer. Once Swami Brahmananda had remarked, when Kali reduces his external activities, people will realize the manifestation of his spiritual power. Abhedananda was virtually bedridden for the last year and a half of his life. Even in that condition, every night after supper, his disciples would read the manuscript of his lectures and he would dictate corrections. On 14th January 1838, in spite of his severe illness, he went to Belur Math to attend the dedication ceremony of Sri Ramakrishna's marble statue in the new temple. While Vijnanananda was installing the relics of the Master in the altar, Abhedananda stood motionless, listening to the monks singing a hymn he had composed for the Master during his Purnananda days. It was his last visit to Belur Math. Abhedananda had played his part in the divine drama of Sri Ramakrishna. Gradually, the great yogi made himself ready to return to his beloved Guru. One day, he said to a disciple, "My body belongs to the Master." Towards the end, he indicated that his body should be cremated at the Kashipur cremation ground after his death. And on 7th September 1939, he followed his regular routine, but in the evening, he had a high temperature that continued the whole night. His disciples served him around the clock. In the morning he felt a little better and asked his attendant to give him a glass of water. He sat on his bed and lay down after drinking the water. Swami Abhedananda passed away shortly after 8:16 a.m. on Friday, 8th September 1939. The news of his death spread throughout the city. An announcement was broadcast by All India Radio. The devotees and monks of Belur Math and all other ashrams flocked to see Abhedananda at the Ramakrishna Vedanta Math. His body was carried in procession and cremated at Kashipur cremation ground, and his disciples followed his last request, "Make a little place for me at the feet of the Master." Towards the end of his life, this great austere Vedantin, Abhedananda, told his disciples, "Tapasya, spiritual or austerity, enhances willpower. Have self-confidence. Have faith in yourself. Think I am a child of immortal bliss. The infinite power is playing within me, and if you have this conviction, you will conquer the world." So these are all inspiring. Any saintly life is an inspiring life. And we should be able to pick up a few things, at least, that we can emulate from these great lives.